Sports fans, Rev Tom here, just checking the camera. It is Friday night, the first Friday of October, as we call it in my house, Tomtober. Tomtober, because it's my birthday month. And so the entire month is mine. The entire month is mine, Tomtober. So welcome. Hey, we're going to do a first stone service tonight. You know, that's the first Friday of the month we do this. I'm supposed to preach on the second Friday too, and I haven't been doing that, so I apologize. I'm going to get to that. I've just been delinquent, so, no excuse. I'm just delinquent. Anyway, tonight I want to talk about Joseph. And you remember him. Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37 through 50. I'm not going to read the whole thing, so don't panic. But I'm going to talk about what lessons we can learn from Joseph. And there's a lot. There's a lot there. And the reason I'm doing it is I've been reading this. I've finished reading the Bible, and I'm starting over again. So I'm at the back end of Genesis, heading into Exodus, and I was thinking, what should I talk about tonight? I was like, gosh, there's just so much in the Joseph story that we can learn about how to live our lives a little bit. And so if you have a Bible, go ahead and open chapter 37 of Genesis, and I'm just going to kind of walk through some things. I got a couple notes here off to my left, your right, and we'll go through those. But there's some fascinating things about the Joseph story, and I'm just going to ramble a little bit because there's two tracks I'm going to go on. The one track is, how does Joseph in that story affect us today, right? Obviously. But the other part of this is Joseph is considered a type, and that's a theological word meaning a representation of Jesus in the Old Testament. And so there are some parallels between Joseph and Jesus that don't get lost on us as we're running through the story. So as I'm kind of talking about this, you're going to see me talk about, what it means to us, and then what it means in terms of the type of Jesus that you can see Jesus in the Old Testament. One of the things that Jesus told us very clearly is the Torah, the scriptures refer to him. And he says that to the Pharisees and Sadducees and the religious leaders that it's all about him, because it really is all about Messiah. And if you want to do an interesting thing, Google Jesus in the Old Testament. Just Google that, and you'll see in every book of the Old Testament how it relates to Jesus. And I haven't done that for quite some time. I've downloaded that and I have it, but I'm just going to focus on Joseph a little bit tonight, and see if you follow with me, see if any of this resonates with you at all. So let's get into this. I might need some glasses tonight because I'm blind, and I can't read a Bible without. I don't even care if it's large print Bible or a giant print Bible. I can't read it without glasses. It's just sad. The VA keeps telling me I don't need real glasses, so I just have these like readers, but I'm at 2.0 moving to 2.5, so it's not so great. Don't get old. It's not for sissies. So here we go. In chapter 37, we learn that Jacob, we talk about the patriarchs, and we talk about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob is Abraham's grandson. He has all these children, and he ends up having Joseph with his favorite wife, Rachel, and Joseph has other brothers, and they don't like him. They're from other wives, and Joseph is the favorite kid. Now, let me ask you this. Put the Bible down for a second. Take the glasses off. Get serious. Hey, do you have a favorite kid if you have kids? Now, you're not supposed to, right? You're not supposed to have a favorite kid. You love them all the same. But I don't think you do. I don't think you love all your kids the same. You love them differently because they're different personalities, right? And so every kid has a different personality, and you have a different relationship with them based on that personality, and you have a different love with them and based upon that personality. Now, the overall love you have for your kids is the same, but in terms of the details of it, it's different. And but it should be equal. Right? And this is where Jacob makes his first mistake. Well, Jacob makes a lot of mistakes. If you ever study Jacob, the guy's he's not my favorite guy in the Bible. He's just he's a whiner, and he lies, and he's a shyster, and he is, he's not my favorite guy at all. But he is one of the patriarchs, so you gotta put up with it. And he does have the 12 sons that represent the tribes of Israel. And so he lavishes a different kind of love on Joseph than he does his other children. And the other ones are older. Joseph, when this story starts, is about 17 years old. And these brothers just don't want anything to do with this guy, and kind of rightfully so, because when you spoil the child, they become a little arrogant, right? And they get a little uppity, and let's get into the story and see how this plays out, because this has a lot to do with what happens in the Joseph story. So right when you get to chapter 37, it says Joseph, a young man of 17, he was tending flocks with his brothers, and they were the sons of Bilhah, sons of Zilpah, his other father's other wives, and they came back to their father and brought him a bad report. And they said, and it says, now Israel, which is Jacob, loved Joseph more than any of the other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe. Um, and this is the robe of many colors. Maybe you've heard of Joseph in the Technicolor Robe. I mean, I think they made a musical or something out of that. Crazy in the 70s. But so he gives him this special cloak robe, and in that time, everyone had to have a cloak. You wore it for warmth, you wore it for, you know, uh, you know, fashion. You just slept on it. You did all sorts of things with this thing. It was a multi-purpose thing, and his was fabulous. His was fabulous, and the brothers didn't get anything like that. They probably just got some smelly sheep clothes or something like that, and so they're not happy that the dad is playing favorites here. And so, when his brothers saw that the father loved Joseph more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So then, let's just stop there. That's strong language. That's strong language. So one of the things we learn is when you're jealous, hate rises up in you. Now this is an important thing, because our emotions are the same as God's emotions. That's how we're made in his image, right? That's one of the things. And God is jealous. God's a jealous God. But the difference is this. He is a righteous, jealous person. He's jealous for his people. The things he's jealous about are a righteousness. We don't have any righteousness in us, right? We are sin-filled, and every single one of our emotions is perverted by sin. So there's not really one emotion we have that is put out there correctly. Even love. We love imperfectly. We just are really bad this way. And when we get jealous, as his brothers did, we hate. And when we hate, we act. And this is what this story starts out with, is they're going to bring dad a bad report. And as we get into the story, and you may know the story, they try to kill his brother. They try to kill Joseph, and they sell him into slavery is what happens. And they tell the dad that the kid was eaten by a bear or something like this, right? And so when the question you have in your life, have you ever been jealous? Have you ever been jealous? I'm going to take a drink now. You think about that. Have you ever been jealous? I have. I had a real problem with jealousy when I was a young man, for various mental health reasons. Um, but and it riles you up. It makes you hateful. It makes you want to act in ungodly ways. It makes you hate your fellow man. And in this case, you would even hate your brother. Yeah, he's a half brother because of the mom thing. But in that culture, family was everything. It's a collective identity. It's not individualism like we know in America. So for them to hate a brother, and what does Scripture says? How can you say you love God who you've not seen, but hate your brother who you have seen, right? And John's pointing out what a hypocrite you are, to even say something like that. So, but this jealousy you have in your heart, it burns, and it just causes you hate. Now, let me just take this dual track I told you about. So, what about the Jesus story, right? Were the Pharisees and Sadducees jealous of Jesus? Absolutely. The scripture says it. They said that one of the things they were worried about, people were following Jesus. They were listening to him. They weren't listening to the Pharisees. They were listening to him, and he's becoming something, and we got to stop this guy. It was all about jealousy. And they hated him for it. And here's Jesus, didn't do anything wrong, right? Joseph didn't do anything wrong. His father just loved him. Jesus didn't do anything wrong. His father just loved him, right? But this hate because of jealousy. So I want to warn you about jealousy, and I can speak of it because I've been this guy. I have to fight it just a little bit nowadays, but nothing like the old days. Jealousy is evil, man. It is evil, especially when it's about people. You know, you can be jealous for things. Some people have something you don't have. That's more envy than jealousy. Jealousy has to do with people to people things. And jealousy will make you hate. And jealousy will make you anger. And scripture says, don't sin in your anger. And we always sin in our anger. It's what we do. It's how we're built as sinful people. So you gotta nip that jealousy thing in the bud, or bad things happen. And this is the Joseph story, and it's the Jesus story, because what did they do to Jesus out of jealousy? They killed him, right? So let's keep going here. Sorry, this might take a little time tonight, but you're gonna enjoy it. Just hang tough with me. Um, they say there this is what Joseph did though. Now remember, he's 17 years old. Remember when you were 17? Did you do dumb stuff? Were you like full of yourself? Yeah, all of us were. So let's go here. Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. I mean, they hated him. Now they really hate him. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out of the field when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright. While the sheaves gathered around me, they bowed down to it. So basically saying, as the youngest son, his brothers are going to bow down to him. And, oh, man, you can't do that. You don't say that. I'm talking about poking people in the eye. They already don't like you, right? So one of the mistakes we learn here is hubris. And that word just means arrogance. Here's Joseph. He's more loved than his brothers by his father. He has to know that. He's getting special gifts. He's being treated differently in the family, right? And like I said, you can love your kids differently because, they're all different kids. But overall, you treat them equally. Joseph was being treated better than his brothers. And I think there's an age gap here, because didn't it say that Jacob had Joseph in his old age? And so in his old age, that means the brothers are probably a lot older, because in that culture, they lived a long time, right? So he's 17 years old. He makes this dumb proclamation about a dream he had. Now, here's the funny thing. The dream's true, right? The dream comes to pass. If you know the story, at the end, the brothers and everyone do have to bow down to him. So, but do you tell someone that? There's this theory that you don't actually have to tell everyone everything that's on your mind. I know it's stunning in this culture that you don't have to go on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and tell everyone what you're thinking. But in my day and age, you could keep things to yourself. And that was a good thing. You didn't poke people in the eye. You didn't hurt people's feelings on purpose. It wasn't all about you. You thought about the other person before you said something, right? So God shows him in this dream what's going to come to pass at some point. But you don't really have to share it, right? But it gets better, because this 17-year-old is such a knucklehead. He says he has a second dream. Because his brother says, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And that's why they hated him. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. I mean, did he not learn the first time? And you can tell that this guy, he likes just goading his brothers. He's getting a kick out of this. He says, listen, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So think about Jacob for a second. Jacob has had face-to-face meetings with God, right? He's wrestled with God. He is the son of Isaac, who is the son of Abraham, the patriarch. So he has a better understanding of God than probably his kids do. And so he knows that God speaks through dreams. And so he's going to keep in mind, what is this dreaming about? What is this? But again, one of the lessons we learn is you can keep information to yourself, and you don't have to say things that are hurtful to other people, even if they're true. Because, like I said, these dreams come true. This is God showing young Joseph there's a prophecy here. There's going to have something happen. But I give him a little bit of quarter because he's 17 years old. Think about when you were 17. Did you ever speak your mind and, later pay for it because you're dumb? Yeah, I think all of us have. And so the kid's just 17 years old. Now, the brothers, let's talk about the brothers. They hated him. And they hated him even more because they were jealous of him because he had this coat and he had these dreams and they're just really fired up. Well, they're older men. I mean, these guys are probably significantly older. They're probably in their 20s, 30s, and the question gets to be, why are you so frustrated with a 17-year-old teenager? What is the deal? Just tell them to shut up and move on, right? Um, but they get jealous and they get angry and they get hateful. And so, what does it say about their maturity and their personality? So, if you're like not 17 and you're in your 20s and 30s, probably more 30s, I'm thinking, even 40s and 50s, and you're still struggling with people, you're still struggling with jealousies and anger and hate, it's saying a lot about your maturity. It's saying that you are not a mature person. It's saying that you have not gotten right with God. Now, there's lots of reasons. You have unresolved issues in your past. You have some depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress issues where you get angry. Your brain doesn't work right. It could be all sorts of things. But the reality is, you're not right. You're not right. And so you've got to look at this and say, is there something in my life that's an unresolved issue that's causing me jealousy and anger and hatred and these things? And how do I take care of that for me? Because you're responsible for it. You don't get to go out and be like these brothers and say, well, let's go kill this kid. He's just driving me crazy. You can't do that. You can't say, I wish that person would die. I forgive that person, but I'm never going to see him again. I mean, all these ways that we justify our anger and things, we can't do that, and it's all sinful. And remember what Scripture says. I always go back to Scripture because that's the kind of guy I am. I'm a Scripture guy. Every word that comes out of your mouth is going to be judged. Not one of us is getting away with anything we've done. Now, I'm not saying your salvation's at risk if you're a Christian. It's not, but your rewards are. Your rewards are. What you're going to get in the afterlife, what you're going to get on the new heaven and earth, that's all at risk based upon how you do things. And do you recognize your sin? Do you hate your sin? Do you repent of your sin? Do your best to turn from it? Do you ask forgiveness for your sin so you own it, right, before God? Do you do all those things? Or do you think it's okay, like these brothers did, that Joseph is a jerk, so let's just hate him and do bad things to him? Where are you? Where are you? These are hard. These are hard things. But the story moves on. So this is interesting. The father at one point says, "Hey, Joseph, your brothers are out. I'm going to send you to them." And they're out tending sheep. They're all like sheep farmers kind of things. And they have their flocks. And so he goes to go find them, and he runs around. He finds them at a place near Dothan. But they saw him first at a distance. And before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. So they're away from the house. They're away from the dad. They got this kid alone. And they said, "Here comes that dreamer." They said to each other, "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns." That's like a well. And say a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. So I got to get into this. This is good. Okay. This is where it's a type of Jesus. The brothers thought that they could short circuit, they could cut off the prophecy of the dreams that God gave Joseph by killing him. The Pharisees thought that they could cut off Jesus and him being the I am by killing him. Now we know in both stories, it worked the exact opposite. It actually facilitated the dream of Joseph coming true, and it facilitated Jesus dying on a cross, saving his people. And so sometimes what you think is going to be the answer to things, especially when you're being sinful about it, is going to backfire on you in a big way. So let me ask you this question. Ever been in a situation where you did some sinful thing in order to stop something you didn't want to have happen, and it blew up on your face, and it happened because of what you did? Right? That's the story here. That's what's going on. And so they're plotting to kill him and throw him in a cistern. Like, that will get rid of that guy, and his dreams won't come true. We're not bowing down to that guy, blah, blah, blah. Well, we know at the end of the story, of course, they have to, which we'll get to tonight. Jesus, well, it was the chief priest who said, better one man die than the entire nation. Better that he die, but no big deal, right? Thinking that they'll just get rid of Jesus and everything will go back to normal. It will be fine. But it was never normal after that, was it? Right? So, ooh, kind of interesting kind of story here. So Joseph shows up at the brothers, and one of the brothers, I think it's Reuben. I gotta put my glasses on to read here. Excuse me here. Yeah, Reuben heard the brothers plotting and said, "Look, don't." He said, "Don't shed any blood. Throw him in a cistern here in the desert, but don't lay a hand on him." Because Reuben was trying to save him because he figured, well, he can go back to the cistern later, pull him out, and bring him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the nice robe, and they took him and threw him into the well. And the well was empty, no water in it. So he's like, splat. Um, and then they ate. And they just went, oh, let's have lunch. Do you have any Grey Poupon? They looked up and saw a caravan coming as they're eating lunch. His brother's in this well. Who knows if he's well or not because he's been dropped, right? And Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. I mean, come on. I mean, do you see how he's justifying this here? We just sell him into slavery. Well, let's not kill him. He's our brother. God. Do you ever do that? Do you ever make justifications for your actions? Like, I'm being pretty benevolent here. I'm not going to do X. I'll just do Y, and I'll be fine. Right? Do you see the justification? It's just like the Pharisees trying to justify killing Jesus. And do you make justifications in your life for doing the wrong thing? I had a guy I worked with, a guy named Gordon Miller. Pretty good guy. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. And he made a comment once that I've used ever since. I've been using it for 25 years. He said, there's never a right way to do the wrong thing. There's never a right way to do the wrong thing. And so when you think about that, and you really chew on that, I mean, it's a nice bumper sticker, but if you chew on it, you go, that hits all of our justifications for the stuff we do and things we try to get away with. There's never a right way to do the wrong thing. There's never a right way to be angry. There's never a right way to be jealous. There's never a right way to hate somebody or dislike somebody. There's never a right way not to do what Jesus told you to do. Never. And so they're justifying, well, to send him into slavery. We'll never see him again. Who cares? And we'll tell the dad. They're still going to tell the dad he was eaten by an animal. And so what they do, put my glasses back on, what they do is they take his clothes and they kind of shred him up, this robe, right? And they dip it in some animal blood, and they bring it back to the father and say, "Oh my gosh, looks like your son was eaten." Now, what's interesting here is Reuben was not there at the time when they sold him. I don't know where Reuben was. So the midnight merchants came by. They pulled Joseph out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels. Remember, they sold Jesus for 30 silver coins, right? The price of a slave. Joseph was sold for the price of a slave. Jesus was sold for the price of a slave. And of course, they took Joseph to Egypt. And so Reuben gets back, and he's like, "Where's the boy? What'd you do?" And they said, "Well, the Ishmaelites came, and we sold him." Oh well, big deal. So they take the robe, put it in his blood, and told Jacob the kid was eaten. Jacob tears his clothes. He's all distraught. He's going to go into mourning. And that's that. They think the kid's gone. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt. He's sold a second time to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. And this is where the story starts to get interesting, right? So here we are. We've learned that jealousy bad, hate bad. Our emotions make us make bad decisions. Justifications bad. Treating people unequally that you're supposed to love, even though you love them differently, treating them unequally bad. Hubris bad. Arrogance. Being 17 is usually bad too. I've seen very few 17-year-olds that have maturity to do something different than what Joseph has done here. I've met some. Emma Fagan can call out to you, and Jonathan Fagan call out to you. Good kids. When they were 17, great kids. Me, not so much. I've made the same mistakes. You get arrogant. It's what you do when you're a teenager. And now he's paying the price for it. So he's 17 years old. He's sold into slavery in Egypt. And then what happens? Well, this story gets really crazy. So remember, God has spoken to Joseph in these dreams. He says, you're going to have people bow down to you, your family bow down to you. God doesn't change his mind. And this is the next piece of this you really gotta um, lean into a little bit. To use one of those cool leadership terms, lean into it. God's plan doesn't change, even when your circumstances do. Let me say that again. God's plan doesn't change even if your circumstances do. So Joseph goes from having dreams. He's the especially loved kid in his house. He's treated like a little spoiled, right? And now he's a slave. And God's plan didn't change for him. It says in Scripture, I'll just tell you what it says, that everything he did in Potiphar's house, this is the captain of the guard in Egypt, prospered. And it was clear that God's hand was on Joseph. And so Potiphar made him kind of head of the household and said, yeah, do what you do, because obviously there's something about you, right? Now, remember, Egypt worshipped the whole pantheon of gods that Egypt had. They didn't worship the one true God. And so Joseph here is again Jacob's son, so the great grandson of Abraham, the patriarch, and God's hands on him. And God's still going to do his plan regardless of the circumstances in which Joseph finds himself. So this is the lesson for us. Your circumstances may change. Matter of fact, your circumstances may suck. You may go from really good to really bad. I mean, I think that from Joseph going from best loved in the household to slave in Egypt, away from his family and his people and all that, it's pretty bad, right? But it gets worse for him. And so there are times when we start to doubt God's plan, as if, I'm not prospering, so God's plan must not be God's plan. No, it has nothing to do with that. We kind of live in this kind of, I don't want to say dualism because that's a bad word in theology, but this kind of a life where the world that we live in affects us, it acts on us, but it doesn't change what God's going to do with us. Even though the things that happen here happen, and there's not a lot we can do with it. We always talk about how God meets you in your circumstances. He doesn't change your circumstances, right? And so here's good old 17, 18-year-old Joseph, and he's a strapping young man, and Potiphar's wife is after him. She wants to sleep with the guy, right? And Joseph won't do it. He's just a righteous guy, and he's like, my master's put me in charge of the house. How could I do such an evil thing? That would be horrible. I would never do that. He's given me everything in his house except you, the wife, and that's wrong. You're sick and wrong, Potiphar's wife. And so she's getting tired of being, basically shot down by Joseph. And at one point, she grabs Joseph and tries to pull him on the bed. And he runs away, but he leaves his jacket. So she lies about him raping her. Potiphar, upset. I mean, this is a slave, by the way. So he puts him in jail. So here's Joseph. He's had this dream that people are going to bow down to him. And now he's in a foreign land, and he is falsely accused, and he's in jail. Jesus is someone everyone should bow down to. He's falsely accused, arrested, interrogated, beaten, and killed. And this is again one of those type things with Joseph. So Joseph is in jail, and he's in jail for 2 years. He's in jail for 2 years. So think about this for a second. What would you be thinking, as an American, all of us in America? And I got some friends in South Africa. Pastor Jerome, if you're watching, good to see you. Marlon, you too. If years went by, I mean, let's say 2-3 years have gone. I don't know how long he was in Potiphar's house before this wife thing happened, but let's say 3 years have happened. And you're not seeing God's hand move, you two being in charge of stuff, people bowing down to you. You've had these dreams. Would you start questioning? Would you start saying, well, maybe these dreams aren't real? Maybe what God said isn't really factual. Maybe I'm wrong. Of course you would. We all do that. We all have questions. We all start to not trust what God's going to do that he showed us. Because sometimes God just shows us once and he says, trust me. And then a lot of time passes before it happens. And if you look at the stories of the Bible, much, much time passed between God's promise and God's fulfillment of that promise. And that's why Scripture says God is not slow as some of us think about it. He's patient. He's patient. He doesn't want any of us to fail and us to perish. And so Scripture says for God, it's timelessness. He doesn't work on our time frame. There is no time in spirituality. God is spirit. There is no time. So it says a day is like 1,000 years and 1,000 years is like a day. He doesn't look at it like we do because he's not like us. He's not us. And so we're pent up because, like in the Joseph case, 3 years has gone by, and you're like, where is this? Where is this thing? What's going to happen here, right? Now remember, the kid's only 20 at this point. Um, Something really interesting happens. He's in jail with two other people from the Pharaoh's kitchen. There was I think there was a chef and cook and a baker or something like this, and not important who they were. And they're having dreams, and Joseph is able to interpret them. God has given him this skill set. And while he's in jail, what's interesting, he rises to the top again. Now, this is an important part that I think's missed a lot of times. When your life is not going the way you want it, you can still be exceptional. I'm a firm believer that no matter what you do it with excellence. At least the best of your ability. Actually, the phrase I use, it's actually in my dojo, is this. You give 100% of what you have every day. Some days your 100% is awesome. Some days your 100%, you're pretty puny and you're just doing the best you can. But every day you give everything you got. And Joseph did that. So when he's in jail, the warden there moves him up and puts him in charge of stuff because, obviously this guy's fairly, even as a young guy, administrative skills are pretty good. And he's doing great. He's doing dreams for people, all this, right? And these two guys get out, and Joseph says, "Hey, remember me when you see Pharaoh. Get me out of here." And they don't. They forget him. So another story that we need to learn from. I mean, there's so much here. Your friends will abandon you sometimes, and when do they remember him? When Pharaoh's having a dream that he can't interpret, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember this guy in jail I was with a while back. He could interpret this dream." And it wasn't because of Joseph could interpret the dream that this guy told Pharaoh that. It was to get on Pharaoh's good side that, hey, we can make this work out for you. And hey, see what I did for you? There's a phrase I used to use when I was in business, and it was this. You're only useful when you're useful. In this world, in this fallen place, the only time you're useful is when you're useful. And when you're not useful to people, your phone won't ring, they won't call you, they won't use you, they won't be friends. People will leave you. I have found that out in many, many circumstances in my life. And it's probably the most depressing thing because if you're truly into a relationship and you like people and you find out that they only like you because you're useful to them for business or connections or networking or whatever it is, you find out you're being used, basically. And isn't that what life is a lot about? Using each other? Yeah, it is. Sorry to burst your bubble if you don't think so, but it is. So they remembered Joseph, not because of Joseph, but because they're trying to get on the good side. So these two guys get out of jail, and what Joseph has told them about the dreams, one's going to get killed, one's going to stay. The guy that stays, the Pharaoh has a dream, and it's really bothering him, and he remembers Joseph. Joseph can interpret dreams, so they get him out of jail, they bring him to Pharaoh, and of course, God gives Joseph the ability to interpret the dream, and it has to do with famine. There's going to be 5 years or 7 years of prosperity, and then 7 years of famine. And this is what the dream was about. And Pharaoh is like, this guy knows what he's talking about. And he puts him in charge of everything. He only answers to Pharaoh. So Joseph goes from being a spoiled little brat at home who doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut to his brothers wanting to kill him. Instead, they just sell him into slavery, because that's better. Being falsely accused of rape, being put in jail, being forgotten by his friends, to being the number 2 guy in all of Egypt behind Pharaoh. That's pretty good, right? And he did that in 3 years. I'm saying 3 years. I don't know how long that it took between the time he got to Egypt and Potiphar's wife put him in jail. But I'm just saying a year. What the heck? So he's still a young man, right? And what's fascinating about the story is most of us, because as Americans we are into instant gratification, we would have given up by then. We would have thought God had just abandoned us and what we thought was not true. And oh well, I guess we just move on with our lives. And then we would start questioning God and our relationship with them. And, I'd stop going to church as much because God didn't come through. And, see how that works? See how subtle that is? And Satan's whispering in your ear, yeah, God sucks. You need to go this way. Because we're not willing to stick with the plan. We're not willing to, when God says something that we actually believe He's going to bring it to fruition, whatever the time frame, doesn't matter what the time frame is, we just think on our own. We go based on our own understanding, which Proverbs tells us not to do. God must have decided, changed his mind, or I didn't hear that right? And so here all of a sudden, Joseph's in charge of stuff, and he makes this great plan. He says, what we're going to do is we're going to make a reserve. We're going to store up grain, and we're going to make sure that when the famine comes, we have grain. And so right now he's given a wife, and he's got a great life all of a sudden. And he's just, like I said, a young man, 20, 21 years old, and off we go. Yay, the story's over, right? No, we're not. Because remember the dream? The dream said that his brothers would bow down to him and his father would come, right? And so how do we reconcile this relationship piece that we get to here in Egypt? I mean, his dad doesn't even know he's alive. He's like dead. But Joseph is living his life. Well, the famine comes, and it affects everybody in the region, including Jacob and his family, and they got nothing to eat. So he sends his brothers to Egypt to go buy grain. And this is where the story gets even more interesting. So the brothers show up, and they don't recognize Joseph, but Joseph recognizes them, right? And so he starts... at first, he's like overwhelmed, but he starts playing little games with them. So I'm going to get into this a little bit because it's an interesting thing. And I got to kind of walk through what he did and why he did it and all that kind of stuff. So, oh, by the way, if you're going 37 through 50, chapters 37 through 50, 38 is a side story, chapter 38 about Judah and Tamar. It's an important story because it's also a great learning lesson. But just FYI, on 38 will have nothing to do with the Joseph story. So let's see here. We got 2 full years pass. He tells Pharaoh his dream. His brothers show up. So Jacob learns there's grain in Egypt. He sends his sons. He says this, why do you just keep looking at each other? Look, dummies. I've heard there's grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die. Then 10 of Joseph's brothers, 10 brothers. So there's 10 brothers, Joseph, and then there's the youngest brother, Benjamin. They go down to Israel. And at this point, Joseph's the governor of the land, and he's the one that sells all the grain to people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, they bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but they pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? They said, the land of Canaan, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, you are spies. You have come to see our land, which is unprotected. And he keeps accusing them of being spies. Why would he do that? Well, I think that he's just poking him in the chest, like, oh, I remember you. You're the ones that threw me in a cistern, were going to kill me, and sold me into slavery and caused me all this trouble. Now look at you. So a little bit of that pride and that a little, I would say, a little revenge here. I mean, he's not super mean to him, but he's harsh to him. Matter of fact, in a minute you'll find out that he keeps one of the brothers and puts him in jail as kind of a holding piece to make sure everyone else comes back. So here, Joseph, I would say, from a Christian perspective, you got to forgive, right? You got to forgive your brothers for what they did. And he was not in a forgiving mood. He is the number 2 guy in all of Egypt. Egypt is a powerhouse country. He runs the place for Pharaoh. And his brothers are now bowing down to him, and he's remembering, look at this dream come true. The 11 chiefs are bowing down before me, just like I said they would, and they don't recognize me. So he accuses them as being spies, and this is what he does to them. He's going to get a little bit of payback here. And so he says, this is how you'll be tested. As sure as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. So they're going to make him bring the youngest brother. Do you see the parallel there? They tried to kill him when he was the youngest brother. Now you're going to bring the youngest brother to me. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest will be kept in prison, so that your words may be tested to see if you're telling the truth. If you're not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are spies." And he put them all in the custody for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here in prison." So he changed his mind. He's going to keep them all there, send one back, and have him bring Benjamin. Now he's like, "Okay, tell you what, I'll just keep one of you here, while the rest of you go take grain back for your starving household. But you must bring the youngest brother to me, so that your words may be verified and that you may not die." This they proceeded to do. Okay? So they said to each other, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded for his life, but we would not listen. That's why this distress has come upon us." So they know exactly why they're getting this karma payback right now, right? They get it. They screwed over their brother Joseph. They don't recognize that he's the Pharaoh guy right now, but they knew that they're getting back what they gave out. And they said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother." Then he says, Reuben replied, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy Reuben?" Now the brothers are fighting. "I told you not to hurt the kid. Now we must give an accounting for his blood." They did not realize that Joseph could understand them. So they're arguing among themselves right there, right? And Joseph can speak their language, but they don't know that he speaks their language because he's been using an interpreter. So at this point, Joseph kind of runs away and weeps because he knows he's putting him through it, but he thinks he has to put him through it. There has to be some kind of justice for this, for what they did. And he had Simeon taken from them and bound before their eyes. Joseph gave the order to fill their bags with grain, and then he told them, "Put each man's silver back in the bag." So he didn't let them pay for it. And what's fascinating about this story is they go back, and at one point they got to check their bags, and they find the money that they were supposed to buy the grain with is in the bags. And they freak out. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's going to look like we stole this stuff." And they get home, and they tell Jacob what's happened, and that Simeon's been arrested, and he's in jail, and that they got to bring Benjamin back to get Simeon, and that they got this money still. So it says, when they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened. They said, "The man who is Lord over the land spoke harshly to us and treated us as though we were spying on the land. No one is more, and the youngest is now," he says, "we are 12 brothers, sons of one father. One is no more," talking about Joseph, "and the youngest is now with our father in Canaan." So he tells them what he got to do, bring the youngest brother to me. And Jacob's very unhappy. He's like, "Why would you do this? And you have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." That's Jacob's response to them. And Reuben said to his father, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring him back to you." So Reuben again is like the savior of trying to save the brothers. But this is interesting. Now the famine was still very severe in the land. Remember, it was supposed to be 7 years. So they had eaten all the grain they had brought from Egypt. What happened to Simeon? How much grain did they bring back? There were 10 of them that went to Egypt. 9 of them had bags of grain they brought back. They ate all that and then went, I guess we got to go back to Egypt now. They left Simeon in jail that whole time. No one even thought about that. Poor Simeon's just like, "Oh gosh, my brothers don't care about me." So still not great. I mean, these people just aren't really doing what they're supposed to do here in terms of taking care of family, are they? And I poke myself in the eye with that. Yikes. I'm so excited about this story. So they go back, and they said, "But we can't go back without Benjamin. If we go back without Benjamin, they'll arrest us all." But they need more food, and that's the only place you could get food because Joseph had the stocks. So Jacob says, "Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling the man you had another brother?" And they said, "The man questioned us closely about ourselves and our family. Is your father still living? Do you have another brother?" We simply answered his questions. How are we to know what he would say? "Bring your brother down here." So Judah said to Israel's father, "Send the boy along with me. We will go at once so that we and your children may live and not die. I myself will guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to set him before you. I will bear the blame before you all my life. So they end up, Jacob kind of says, if you got to do this, you got to do this. So they go back to Egypt. Um, so Joseph sets out a meal for them. And he starts giving Benjamin more than all the others. He starts lavishing on the younger. Because I think it's kind of projecting his position, the youngest, on this kid, right? So at one point they get back, they find a servant, and they tell him, "Look, we're bringing back the money also that you gave us for the grain, because it was back in our sacks when we left the first time." And the guy says, "Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. It's all right. That was on purpose to do that." And then they brought Simeon out to him. So the question is, was Simeon under house arrest, or was he really in jail? Right? Maybe he was just on house arrest, being treated okay. So they bowed down before Joseph again, and he asked, "How is your aged father? Tell me about him. Your servant your father is still alive," and they all bowed down and paid him honor. And he looked and saw his brother Benjamin, his own mother's son, because he and Benjamin came from the same mom. He asked, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about?" He said, "Yes." "God be gracious to you, my son." Deeply moved at the sight of his brothers, Joseph hurried out and looked for a place to weep. After he washed his face and controlled himself, he began to serve their food. Right? Now, this is interesting. Joseph gave instructions to the steward of the house: "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver in the mouth of the sack. Put my cup, the silver one, in the mouth of the youngest sack, along with the silver for his grain." So he's setting them up again. So why is he playing this game, right? He's toying with them a little bit. Now, I think Joseph, again, he wants to get a little payback on the brothers. And he's not being super mean. He's not being harsh. He's not hurting them, but he's definitely playing with them. So what happens is they leave, the 11, right? And Joseph sends a group after him and says, "One of you stole the cup that they had hid in Benjamin's pack." And they're like, "No, we didn't. We're honest men. You can check all our stuff." And they said, "Well, whoever got it has to come back with us," right? And sure enough, it was Benjamin, because it was a setup. But it was a setup on purpose. So Benjamin has the cup, and they're incredibly distraught. They promised that they were going to bring Benjamin back, and now Benjamin's going to go, they think, to jail for stealing this cup. And of course, Judah stands up and says, "Take me. I'm the one that should go, not the young man." And of course, Joseph's got a plan here. He's like, no, that's not about that. And so they all go back to Egypt. They're on the road, but they all go back. And then Joseph could no longer control himself. So he's got everybody in front of him, right? And before all of his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So all the Egyptians left, and it's just him and his brothers. So there's no one Joseph, and he made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household heard about it. Joseph says to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Now think about the brothers, like, "Oh, crap. It's him. We tried to kill him. Now he's in charge. We're bowing down to him. The dream's true. What's he going to do to us?" Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come close to me." And when they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save the lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years there will not be plowing or reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve you for the remnant on earth, and to save your lives by this great deliverance." Ooh. Ooh. Now there's the parallel of Jesus again, isn't there? God sent his son into the world to die for the sins of many, so there would be a remnant. Paul tells us not all Israel is Israel, right? Not every Jew is going to come to a saving understanding of Jesus. But there's going to be a remnant. There's always a remnant. God always leaves a remnant of his people. Plus there's the church. And so Joseph was sent ahead to save his people. Jesus was sent ahead to save his people. And this is where this parallel, this type thing we've been talking about comes in this story. So Um, and now he shows incredible forgiveness. Now remember, these brothers are jerks. They hated him. I mean, they hated him. They hated him even more out of their jealousy of him. And he's got them in front of him, and he's toyed with them a little bit, right? Gave their money back, kept Simeon for a while until they brought Benjamin, got Benjamin back, got all the brothers in front of him, and then he says, "Okay, the gig's up. I'll let you know who I am. I am Joseph." Right? Interesting. Jesus didn't like tell everyone who he was at first either, did he? And then he says, I am, I am the bread of life." All that stuff, the I ams. I think there's 7 of them, by the way. And so the story ends with, well, the story gets a little deeper, but the story ends with Joseph tells his brothers, "Go back, grab the family, grab dad, bring them here. We will set you in the land of Goshen, which is in, I think, northern Egypt at that point, right at the cross of a couple rivers, very, very fertile land. And they are shepherds by trade, which is not a popular or it's not popular, but it's a low end job as far as the Egyptians are concerned. But Pharaoh hears that Jacob has found his brothers and his family, and he invites them all in and says, "You can watch my flocks too, and we'll put you in the best part of the land." And then for the next 400 years, Israelites are in Egypt. Now Jacob dies and has his bones moved back to be buried back in Canaan, and Joseph dies in the same, right? But Israelites stay, and then they become enslaved, because what happens is after Pharaoh dies as Pharaoh, other pharaohs come and they get really worried because the Israelites are being fruitful and multiplying, and there's a lot of them. They've never caused any problem in Egypt, but Pharaoh's worried that if they ever did want to cause trouble, there's enough of them to really be a problem for Egypt. So they enslave them. And that's where you get the end of Genesis, right? You get the end of the Joseph story. There's a big gap between that and Exodus, where Moses comes on the scene and Israelites are enslaved in Egypt, and Moses goes to save his people for God. Now we look at these numbers and go, 400 years. I mean, how many generations is that? How many people suffered under like slavery? For does God not care? Of course, God cares, but God's got a bigger plan, and this is the whole point of Joseph. God's got a bigger plan, and our timing and the things and circumstances that doesn't matter. What matters is that we stay faithful to the plan, because God's plans always come to fruition. And it's really hard to remember that, right? So I'll tell you a little bit of a story about me that is, I guess, embarrassing, but okay. When I was 10, God called me to the ministry. I remember it very succinctly. I won't tell you the story, but I knew all my life I was supposed to be in the ministry. And while I accepted Jesus as my Savior, I certainly didn't follow him as my Lord. I lived a very normal, what you would consider, just worldly life. Went to college, joined a fraternity, did all the stuff you do, lived life just like everybody else, because I understood who Jesus was and all that, but I didn't understand the discipleship, the serving, the lordship, all that kind of stuff. I understood him as my Savior. I always talked to God. I always prayed. That wasn't the issue. But I knew I wasn't going to be in the ministry. My personality is not one that you would figure to be in a church. I'm just not that guy. And it took 40 years. When I turned 40, God called me, and it was like, "No, we're serious. We're going to actually do this." And I started getting into church. I've been out of the church 25 years. And I went to seminary, and I started doing Bible studies and doing baptisms and started doing communion and started doing all this stuff. But I wasn't getting ordained, because like, I don't need to ordain. I wrote a book, did all sorts of stuff. And it's like, yeah, and I wrestled with ordination for 10 years. And I didn't really get ordained until my 50s, because I just didn't know if I had to or not. But when God called me into full-time ministry, that was 2013. I was doing part-time before then. It came to fruition, what God told me to do. And the ministry I have it's para-ministry. I'm not pastoring a church, and there are reasons for that, you lucky people, but I do a lot of other things. And God's plan was God's plan. And I'm like Jonah, no matter how far I ran from it, God's plan's God's plan. It was going to come to pass. So I may have been 10 years old when he told me, and I may have ran from it for a good portion of my life. But God's plan is God's plan, and it happens. And so the encouragement I think you should get from the Joseph story is multifold. One, God's plan is God's plan. You know, you got to trust it. If some point along the way he told you something, it's going to happen. It may not happen in any kind of quickness in time that we look at time. It may take decades, and that's okay. We learn that our circumstances have nothing to do with God's plan. You know, at the end of the book, Joseph says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And it parallels what Paul says, that um, God will use all things for the good of those who love him. So our circumstances are our circumstances. It doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, comfortable, content, whatever your lifestyle is. It doesn't matter where you live in your car, whatever. Your circumstances are your circumstances. That doesn't mean God can't act within them and won't act within them. Joseph was in jail, falsely accused of rape. Now think about that for a second. You know, that's pretty serious. And in that day and age, raping the head of the guard of Pharaoh, I mean, that's a very serious thing. Could get killed for that. Your circumstances are your circumstances. So I don't know what's going on in your life right now, and you know, you may have a great life, you may have a sucky life, who knows? But it doesn't matter. You know, God's got this plan, and it will come to fruition. Now, you have to stick with the plan. You have to want it. You can't just bail out, right? What's God supposed to do if you bail out of it? So you got to believe. You got to believe that it's going to happen, right? So you got to have patience. You have to have long suffering. That's the word they use in Galatians 5, 22, 23. They're talking about peace, love, joy. It says patience. It's actually long suffering. And some of us understand long suffering better than we understand patience. So you got this piece. You got this piece of it's about trust. And it's easy to lose trust when things don't happen in our time frame. Scripture talks about how hope delayed is like crushing to the bones, and it is. Hope delayed it stinks. But with God, we can always have hope because it always comes to pass. Now think about Messiah for a second. You know, Jews have been looking for Messiah since Genesis, right? I mean, if you want to look from it from a perspective of Moses, you can say that Moses said one will come along like him. So ever since Moses, they were looking for the Messiah. All the books talk about Messiah. It took them how long? First century. That's a long time. There are 400 years between the end of Malachi, which is the last prophet of Israel, and Jesus. 400 years. The Egyptians had Jews in slavery for 400 years. I mean, long periods of times passed, but not for God. And so it may not be my generation that sees X, Y, or Z, but all I have to worry about is what I do in my time with what God has me doing and stay focused on that thing, because that's what I'm here for. And then I will meet Jesus face to face when my time is up. And that's all I got to worry about. And so I tell you, do your thing. Do what God calls you to do. And don't worry about the time frames. Don't worry about all this stuff. You know, people are talking about revivals and end times and all. Who cares? You know, it doesn't matter. Look, keep watch. When that trumpet blows, be ready, right? But live your life for the Lord. That's what Joseph did. He had no idea his brothers were going to show up to get grain. No idea. Probably it was the last thing on his mind when these people showed up, because everyone's showing up for grain. All of a sudden it's his brothers. He's like, oh, the dreams. And it clicked. He was just living his life. Right? So I think that no matter how good or bad your circumstances, you can't allow your circumstances to dictate what God's going to do in your life. You got to listen to what God says he's going to do in your life and follow that within your circumstances. And don't just think because you're a God follower that, you know, you follow Jesus so your life's going to be perfect. No, it ain't. Your circumstances are going to be hard. Satan's going to come after you hard. It could be pretty bad. You know, I know some of the most faithful Christians that have the hardest struggles. Emotionally, physically, financially, otherwise. So it's not all about Man, I'm a believer, so things are good. No, that I don't see that in Scripture anywhere. David was a man after God's own heart, and he lived in a cave, right? Um, Look, Jesus said, "I had no place to lay his head." Look what happened to, to all the apostles. It's not about our circumstances. It's about our faith. It's about our faith. And the Joseph story is one about faith. It's about God said he'd do something, and God did it. And he did it in his timing and his way. And sometimes he will use your circumstances, which other people truly mean for harm, and he will use it for good, just like Scripture says. So if you're going through something right now, I just want to encourage you. God's going to use it for good because that's what God does. Stay close to him. Jesus will see you through whatever it is. But look for how God's going to use your circumstances and lean into it. Give 100% of what you have every day. Excel even in your crappy circumstances. Just excel. Rise to the top just like Joseph. Because God's going to use you. Because God's plans never fail. All right, my 1 hour is up. So I hope you have had a great night and happy Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. I've got a big weekend planned. I got karate tomorrow. I'm going to show karate movies to kids afterwards. We're going to have a great time. And then Sunday we got church and all that stuff that we do there. So just a big weekend. Hope you're doing okay. If not, and you need to reach out, you all know where to find me right here on Facebook. All right, we'll talk to you soon.